Just tuning in, you are listening to Poetry, Poetry, Poetry. You're watching Poetry, Poetry, Poetry. And once again, Michael Newton.
Thank you. Um, this is for this is a poem that I actually did at the New Eurekan in 1997. I updated it since, um, and this is to all the old house heads and to those of us that thought being in the village was the place to be. And this is entitled "Angels at St. Vincent's." My goddaughter asked, and I blinked. Tugging again, she asks, "So tell me, Godfather, what was here?" I look, I blink, start trembling a bit, and my mouth begins to water. My mind begins to say names: Maurice, Rodney, Hilton, Tyrone, ancestral beings that wait for acknowledgement. She tugs my arm as we look at yet another unaffordable condo. Luxury that poverty can't buy, built on the memories of comrades lost. My eyes blink again, and suddenly it's February 1994. And all over again, I remember sitting vigil at St. Vincent's Hospital, while my brother from another mother winces in unconscious awareness. There are pictures taped to the wall of all of our friends and nurses covered like hazmat drones. You lie still, eyes closed, your breathing shallow, rapid as I pace the humid, crowded hospital room. Anxious, guilty, angry, I sit by your bed. Memories flood my mind as I wait for your laugh and your smile. Oh, our memories of the club. 3 drink tickets, 3-day relationships, whack ass relationships with confused married men. Memory echoes, memory echoes. Seeing my once big ass friend now reduced to skeletal trauma. I see the tubes and the switches and the machines and the clicks. I nod in the hard hospital chair, and your yellow tinged eyes suddenly open wide, vacant, scared, seeing you see me, whispering, "It's time, Michael." But I'm selfish, and you can't leave like the others. You can't leave, but your tired eyes speak out, "Please, baby, please." And I hear the voices of old Black women in white, like Clara Ward, like Mahalia Jackson. Your soul begins to pulse. The tubes that push pull toxins out of your body begin to pop and explode. And I see your soul emerging, rising to the love of the divine. I yell in tongues of rage, "You will not abandon me. You will not leave me like the others." White light explodes and I get selfish. I attempt to push your soul back in your body. I splash Florida water. I pray loudly, and I begin to remember the songs we sang while drunk and off key. It's not over, it's not over. And you whisper, "Michael, baby, you gotta let me go." Your soul pushes me into the floor. I fall. You rise as the women in all white descend. "Mary, don't you weep. Mary, don't you weep. Tell Martha, tell Martha not to moan." And as I cry, I see your unblemished, your unscarred, your skin reborn, your smile radiant, your body taking flight. As you ascend to the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, as you ascend to the arms of Jesus that pastors said you would never ever touch, Your soul ascends and you speak, Michael, baby, I am free. I am free. And the women in white walk you to yonder. The room becomes dull. The light is cold. Doctors mark the time of death. Nurses cover your body. And here at St. Vincent's, I lose another brother. The force of my screams alerts security as they lead me away. But in the distance of the halls of St. Vincent's, I hear the choir of old Black women. Mary, don't you weep. Mary, don't you weep. Tell Michael not to moan. You tell the story of Black men who loved other Black men fiercely. You tell the stories that Black folk don't want to hear. Say their names, talk up the spirits, and be joyous like you all were at the garage with gospel house pouring through Larry's speakers, libations, libations, your souls exploding into the divine, the divine. Mary, don't you weep. But Michael, don't moan. Don't moan. Don't moan. Peace.
Peace. That is Michael Newton. And what was the name of that again? Vigil at St. Vincent's?
Angels at, angels at St. Vincent's, yeah.
Angels at St. Vincent's. Um, I don't want to insert any of my thoughts on what that's about right now without giving you an opportunity to speak on it first. What is that poem about?
There's a whole generation of people, maybe good, I don't know, that will never know the role that St. Vincent's Hospital played uh, during what I call the AIDS years. That was one of the hospitals that you would go for treatment. And in those days, in the late 80s and 90s, the place you went to die. Because, if you were diagnosed, this was before the cocktails, before the, stuff. And it was a foregone conclusion. You would die. And so I had many a friend who died there. And I always thought, you know, it's a sacred place to have all those souls die in that one spot. And often, especially in the Black church, as a gay man, as a gay Black man, you're told that Jesus is not even looking at you. You have no right to the kingdom. You have no right to anything but hell. And so to take a hospital, St. Vincent's, and to make it a portal for where these souls, in this case, my best friends, are ushered to the arms of Jesus, despite the dogma. And that's where Angels at St. Vincent's came. That my friends did not die in vain. You know, that's just part of where that came from.
Wow. If you're just tuning in, you are listening to Deep Dope Soul. Well, you're listening to Poetry at deepdopesoul.com. I'm online. I was trying to find out uh, what Saint Vincent was the patron saint of, and I'll look that up. I'm usually good with that. I usually know the names of the saints and what they represent, like Saint Christopher, patron saint of travelers, and so
Mhm.
on. Um. Uh. Okay. You know what? I'm gonna go there, and I'm going to express that I'm your friend, and hope that I won't say anything that would make that not so. Um. I've heard Cheryl Lee Ralph, who of course Broadway diva, Broadway queen. Diva is
Mm,
not a big enough word because we see her on TV and we forget that she ruled Broadway in Dreamgirls.
yeah, she did.
Um, and so I've seen her one woman show when she talks about losing friends during the AIDS, uh, during the early part of AIDS when we didn't even know here in Atlantic City about AIDS. It's a stupid question, I guess. I don't know. But what was going through your mind? What was going through your heart at that particular time? Being that you were in New York, uh which unfortunately seems to be ground zero for
Everything.
everything.
um, in 1981, I had just turned, I was 17 going on 18. So I had a fair amount of youthful ignorance. But um, I would say within a year or two, what I always did was I was always and still a reader. And so I would read The Village Voice, New York Native, and I remembered this disease called GRID, GRID. And I remember asking my self appointed gay godfather, what's GRID? Which would later become AIDS. And he mistakenly told me, oh, you don't have to worry. The white boys are getting that. You don't have to worry. So there was a lot of ignorance within the Black community about it. And so during those years, AIDS was something that was in the distance. Yet, in some of the places that I ran, it was kind of like when you hear Grace Jones sing, I've seen that face before, hanging around my door. You would see it in the distance metaphorically, but it didn't touch me until the late 80s and 90s, where now my friends started to succumb. And as a young man, I wasn't always thinking rationally. And there was that whole thing of, well, we're going to die at some point. But I was very lucky. I was very lucky. Um, in some cases, I am the remainder of some friendship circles. I'm the one that's left. So there was a weird dichotomy where one point you are obsessed about who had it. And we had this misguided thing of, oh, he looks like he has it. She looks like she had it. There was a lot of ignorance, a lot of misinformation. Um, it was a tough time. It was a tough time, and you didn't have support. So when I would visit friends at other hospitals, especially St. Clair's, there were bodies lined up in the hallway. Nobody wanted to touch them. Nobody wanted to visit. And around the corner would be a club. So at 26, 27, I'm like, I'm going to the club after I visit you in the hospital. It was a very weird mix. It really was. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but it was.
Well, it does from the standpoint of you have an insight that I don't have. On one hand, you have an insight that I will never have. On the other hand, you have an insight that I do have because I am human and I love people for being human, not based on their sexual orientation. Full disclaimer, was not always that way, but somehow I got there. Um,
Well, there was a time
but
I wouldn't talk about my sexuality. There was a time I wouldn't. Not that I was ashamed. Um, I was scared of the doors that would close without my knowing it.
this is a. I can say this. I used to be a health education specialist for the American Red Cross,
Mm-hmm.
and my one of my chief jobs was to teach AIDS prevention. Now, I don't want to get into all the minutia about
Okay.
um, labels versus practices and behavior, um, but I will say that uh, I'm intelligent enough to know that it's a safety issue. Shoot, as a black man, if there were times where I could pass and not even have to worry about being black, I would do that because it just makes certain things just there's a whole set of problems that I wouldn't just wouldn't have to deal with today. I could choose
Mm-hmm.
to deal with them tomorrow.
Right.
So that being said, you don't have to justify or explain any of that to me, but I'm asking because I want to hear your story in your own words and and understand as best as I can. Um,
You know.
without and I've been doing that with all the poets. I don't choose to. I have you right here, so why would I choose to assume anything when I can ask you just about
Mhm.
anything? But I'm sorry, you wanted to say.
No, just that for some of us that grew up in the 70s, your role models were your parents. It didn't help if you didn't have a good relationship with one of your parents or both. Um, and then you come into the city where you don't have a curfew, but you are bombarded with expectations and labels. And in a self deprecating way, I can say I was stupid enough to not fall for it because there was a lot of pressure to be something, to wear this, to do that. Um, I accepted the fact that I was, and I'm not saying it to be funny. This was my mentality that I wasn't the greatest looking guy. I was quirky. I was nerdy.